Our third panel has a title of local technologies. This is perhaps a quite pertinent topic today, but at the same time, I decided to give a space in the conference because I think many of us have the feeling that around the valorization of the idea of local technologies today, there is a certain cloak of nostalgia regarding an idea of supposed authenticity that tamises with protectionism and inexorable reality that must condemn the massive movements of materials and technologies from one place to another just for commercial reasons. No? Talking about local technologies today, for me, means to open the debate on decarbonization, quality, and value. And this is also affecting not only our practice, but very especially the lives of people. No? To talk about this topic, we have three luxury guests. First will be Papa Matoyo, who is here. MOE plus AA is an architecture and art practice founded in Lagos, Nigeria, by Papa Matoyo, filmmaker, architect, and designer. The practice develops a series of human and environmentally sensitive projects focused on context, culture, materiality, and ecology in Nigeria, but by extension also in Africa and beyond. Second guest, Tonchai Chansmak and Pacharada Implant are cellmakers are here. It's a small practice based established in Chiang Mai, Thailand. It's one of the practices that I did a big effort to find them and to contact them. But they are working in the definition of local architecture through the process of design and meaning of the construction indigenous traditions. No? This is one of the ways of thinking in local construction techniques that we are interested in. No? And they are, I think that perhaps they are going to talk us about the planning of opening or building, I don't know if it's already completed, workshop space, no? That promises a real symbiosis between architecture, community, and construction techniques. Kilo Hong are based in Bratislava, Slovakia. Ricardo Kilo and Richard, sorry for the Spanishization of your name, and Mate Hong represent here the evidence that local technologies are everywhere. No? So we don't have to go to certain contexts to find and to understand that the question of design, talking about these localities, no, is how to escape certain cliches. And I think in their work, innovation in the use of conventional materials and an optimistic attitude do the rest of their work. David Benjamin, that is there, will moderate the panel. David is a founding principal of the Living, associate professor at Columbia GSAPP for many years, where he also directs the GSAPP incubator. And Benjamin's work combines research and practice, and it involves exploring new ideas through prototyping. No? Focusing on the intersection of biology, computation, and design, Benjamin has articulated three frameworks for Hammerstead living organisms of architecture: bioprocessing, biosensing, and biomanufacturing. The Living, his office, has won many competitions and has developed significant projects like the one in laboratory in Princeton University, the Peer 35 Eco Park, and of course the very well considered and remembered by all of us, the hi-fi tower of recyclable and biodegradable bricks in PS1, New York. Let me invite Moe to come to the front and start the presentations of the evening of the symposium. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Juan. Kendra, I can't see her. And I guess thanks to all the team that helped prepare, get us here. As we say in Nigeria, may the fruits nourish generations to come. Super excited to be here, everything in the morning session. Thank you to all the practices. It's really felt like there's a lot of kinship in the room. It's also great to be in New York because I am obsessed with hip hop. It is the love of my life. And I can only say that because my wife isn't here. But it's great to be in the city. I'm going to structure this conversation in sort of 3 chapters. And they're not really about showcasing our work or our practice, which we're really proud of. You can see some of it on our Instagram page and our sort of our influx website. But today I'm really here to give an overview of our specific local context and conditions and a short overview of my own personal journey in architecture. And for me, the foundations of that journey is the idea of self-discovery. And it sort of cements my direction and the things that I've done and the things that I continue to do. So firstly, an introduction. I am Olaiwola Olumide Omotayo. I'm from Nigeria, which is in West Africa with about 200 plus million people. And about 70% of them are under 35 years old. There are typos in this presentation, just to warn you. That's the first. And it's about 350 varying languages and ethnic groups. My family come from, on both sides, and funny enough, even my wife, I just realized, from the same area called Ijebu-Ode for as long as we can remember, and that's in the southwest region, about, if you know Nigeria, maybe about 2 hours from Lagos. I'm from the Yoruba group, and the land around Ijebu-Ode is mostly red earth and dense forestry. And historically, we are kind of known as traders. And I come from a family of traders. My journey in architecture started in education, where I went to the United Kingdom to study. And one of my first conversations was when I introduced myself. And I was asked if I would like to be called Ollie. And my answer was no, but you can call me Papa. And everybody calls me Papa, which is our father's return, which is my mother's name. And the simplicity of that moment for me, at the very start of my education, kind of made me aware of certain things. I think as students of architecture in this room, you're kind of aware of the challenges of the things that you care about and the things that you were taught. And for me, it was always essential to understand that even though you have this amazing opportunity to go to the United Kingdom and get this knowledge, it was always sort of be structured with bias because, you know, the things that I thought were really important and the references that sort of cemented, I guess, not just my upbringing, but my passions, never kind of entered into my architectural education. And I think the good thing was sort of learning this importance of collaboration. I think it's something to really hold on to, and I think so many people have talked about today. But also this idea of designing in context, which I think architectural education really kind of inspires. And for me, you know, deciding to go to a school that was really much focused on ecology and environmental design, but there was sort of no diversity and understanding between the spaces that I was kind of coming from. And this was sort of I guess it came to crescendo in my part 3 thesis project. Ines Anakis, I'm not sure if you know, he did a pavilion with Le Corbusier for the 1958 Brussels Expo, and it's a beautiful, beautiful project, and it was based on some of his classical music competitions. And I had made a proposal from my professor at the time that my flatmate and I at the time had been composing these instrumental hip hop and Afrobeat samples, and we kind of felt super passionate that my thesis could be based around this, and we went so far ahead. We engaged Kanye King, who had just founded an organization called MOBO, Music of Black Origin, in the United Kingdom. And it was one of the first organizations to really kind of think structurally about conservation of music from that region. We found a site in a now gentrified part of London, and we made our proposal. But that was sort of when I fell out of love with architecture and sort of decided to take a different path. And a group of us in the United Kingdom at this time, I guess it was just a small collective of designers that were interested in non-Occidental cities. And I think that, it's an opportunity for lots of students, just started trying to figure out a way to connect themselves with the places that they came from. And luckily, we were able to get some funding from Richard Rogers at the time, the organization Rogers Cirque Harbour, and they were super influential for me in terms of how their organization really thought about practice, not just how they treated their staff, but how they kind of extended opportunities to, I guess, other voices. But a warning, or rather a final learning and a self-discovery for us. And I think it's something that I tell students, or when I speak to people, I say, look, it's really important to understand who you are, understand what interests you, and envision a future with sort of extended parameters beyond what you might understand to be architecture. But more importantly, the importance of finding allies, and allies that can allow you to foster collaboration for your own opportunities. But a word of warning, and I'll read an extract from a really important author, Dambuza Marechera, no longer alive. He was tragically died, but he's probably one of the greatest writers ever, and his ability to sort of stretch and use the English language is phenomenal. I recommend, if anybody gets a chance, to read this book. I remember coming home one day, running with glee. I forget what it was I was happy about, and I thought it was a rather dismal day. The sky looked as if God was wringing out his dirty underwear. I was on heat with living. I burst into the room and all at once exploded into my story, telling it relentlessly with expansive gestures, telling it to Mother, who was just staring. A stinging slap that made my ear sing stopped me. I stared at Mother in confusion. She hit me again. How dare you speaking English to me, she said crossly. You know I don't understand it, and you think because you're educated, she hit me again. I'm not speaking in I began but stopped as I suddenly realized that I was talking to her in English. This passage is super profound, and for me, it sort of structures the next chapter, which is about learning. So, through the community of Booker, my creative partner at the time, Dele, who was studying at Cambridge University at the time and having similar challenges, we would do, like many people have mentioned here, we would enter competitions, but in addition to that, we would pitch to local governments. We really went into black churches, which was strange, but black churches had huge amounts of land and huge amounts of assets that we were trying to sort of see if we could engage with. A lot of Indian and migrant businesses, because at the time Booker, we had been looking at Mumbai as well as we were looking at Lagos. In a desire to sort of, this excitement of our ideas. And, with the aggressive graft, we sort of won a competition. I think quite a few people here have mentioned about this competition win. And lucky for us, it was back home in Nigeria, Bayelsa. Bayelsa is in the Niger Delta, and the Niger Delta has a history of sort of environmental exploitation. It's the part of Nigeria that a lot of oil comes from, and a lot of oil companies since pre and post colonialism have operated there. And we won this opportunity to develop a vocational training center that was going to be funded by an oil and gas industry. And this was really exciting. As you can imagine, it was our first project. We had everything we knew about design, everything we thought we knew about design, we'd put it into this. And we thought we were going back home and we were going to just sort of do this amazing thing. And the project died the moment we landed there. And we were there on site for 2 years and nothing moved. The traditional rulers, the traditional community all rejected the project. And it was an amazing, I'm super grateful for it now, but at the time, it was very, very disheartening. But it was a milestone because it made us understand the complexities of architectural practice within our local context. Despite the seeming good of architects and clients, it was really clear for us that we needed to understand why something like this had failed. We knew the project had not connected with the stakeholders because it failed to resonate culturally or provide a sense of resource empowerment. We were constantly interrogating, trying to find out from the local leaders, the elders, what it was about our project that they didn't want, and they just kept saying, we don't want it. And I think it was hugely distressing, but at the same time, a great opportunity to learn. Many years later, this is Leslie Phillips. She's an artist and filmmaker, and when she was 16 years old, she experienced a pipe spill in her local community in the creeks that lasted for 77 days. So imagine a burst pipe lasting for 77 days without anybody coming to help, that totally devastated and cleaned out her community. And we worked with her about 10 years after that. I think she was about 26 at the time. And it was a kind of and this was maybe about 10 years into our own careers. And it was a really important moment for us to see how the start of our journey, and this was also kind of the end of her community, and how we kind of wanted to figure out how we can bring that together. And we worked with her to develop an installation in a part of Lagos where she had created these immersive experience of the legacy of that action. But, when we went through the project, I think one of the things we learned was the need to create tools and processes. I think we were very naive. I think we've talked about being amateurs when you start off. And the naivety and the excitement of starting is something that I think everybody gets very excited about. And this desire to sort of use all the things you learn and all the tools you've learned to, create architecture or to create interventions. But I think what was important to us that we learned this importance of activism at a very local level, and to understand who makes decisions and how decisions are made. And I think from the assumptions we had started off, which was design was this very linear process to create a product, aesthetics was sort of everything, and this idea that materials are there for exploration, not just exploitation, but the idea that we can just explore things. And also this problem about sidetracking indigenous practices in search of modernity. I think that element is very, very powerful because sometimes people just don't believe in things. So I think critical for us was sort of learning these, and also this idea that when we went into these places and we were projecting things like sustainability, it was the idea that these things were new, and they weren't. And I think what we learned was that, really thinking about how people live. One of the things that is central in Nigeria is the availabilities of materials. You can go somewhere or you can specify a material and you can have it one day, and that same material, 24 hours, is no longer available. So there is this need to just always sort of be flexible and understand that certain elements or certain ideas about reuse and certain things that perhaps you want to apply to these communities and these scenarios are already a norm. So we kind of really we started changing as we were learning these things and stopping ourselves from thinking about architecture and started to just thinking about people. And once we started thinking about people, we wanted to sort of understand how things really work, especially in our context. And this sort of led us, again, to sort of honing on these 4 points, this idea of collaboration, interdisciplinary practice. And I think what we meant by that is architecture is never enough, especially in our local context. It's just not enough. And this idea of communal and community activism. I think for us, activism and also getting stuck in. There was a presentation earlier that talked about in South America how it was really important working with local communities to sort of generate projects. And I think in our context, that is central to everything, but also just resource mapping. And what we mean by that in our organization is that we're constantly trying to map the things that we use in our project in very real and deliberate ways. And also not just do it from an academic and a research point of view, but literally, physically understanding how one thing moves to another place and from another place to another place and seeing how we can help that process, as opposed to us just saying we need this thing and expecting it to arrive where we are. And in mapping that, those resources and understanding how those resources move, it enables us to sort of connect better with the people who are leading on those processes. And the final thing is about intent and evolution. I think as we went through my own personal self-discovery and the learnings from the initial projects that we were doing and the things that we were trying to think about, we now started thinking about what is the intent and then how is that intent evolving. This is some of my team. I was supposed to be here, myself and Eve, who was supposed to be here with me, but she wasn't able to get a visa. And this issue sort of follows us, as one has mentioned, many practices from the continent, right up to our presentation last year at Venice Biennale, where Eve again and some other architects from Kenya, including Leslie's own team, were not able to get visas. And we sort of worked with Cave Bureau on a silent protest of this matter. So we're a pretty young team. There's about 14 core people, multiple specialists, and some extended collaborators. Every project works in collaboration with somebody else, a guild, informal participants. We're very, very adamant that our projects are engaged with policymakers. So we actively make sure that when we're trying to do a project, we figure out how we can engage with decision makers for them to sort of understand why this project is important. We don't always leave that to the client. 40% of our team are not trained architects, and we have a policy of for every one man we hire, we have to hire 2 women, just because Nigerian women are better fundamentally at everything. But also kind of understanding, the space or the context in which we are in Nigeria, and the role the women play in that society. And my job often is to really be a facilitator more than an architect. And I think it's a role that I prefer a lot. I always tell people that I'm not really interested in design. I'm not necessarily interested in how things look. I'm interested, we've talked about the stories behind them, but I'm also really fundamentally interested in how interventions empower people's lives in very real, tangible ways. And I think being able to facilitate that process that may end up in architecture, it may not end up in architecture, but the training of architecture is fantastic and foundational. But ultimately, as our organization has grown, our aim is to sort of drive towards creating positive impact on the well-being of the communities we benefit from, and sort of figuring out how to weave that obligation into the fibers, fabric, and the process of everything, like our full engagement models. And central to that is understanding the city which we're in, which is Lagos. And Lagos is, like a lot of places in the global south, is going through this massive rate of urbanization. And I think for us to ignore that and the impact of urbanization, which happens in Lagos mostly informally at a huge rate, would be sort of naive as a practice. And the city is surrounded by a lagoon, and that lagoon sort of highlights some of the city's inherent contradictions. It's some really genuine existing ecosystems that are very, very diverse and very open sourced, very interdependent, and multi-generational. So there is this kind of existing ecosystem of these local models that are very far away from sort of beautiful rendered models or 3D visuals. And it's insane because Lagos is once this sort of strange, hyper-capitalist space, but at the same time, its sort of biggest opponent, because every time capital meets indigenous practices or sort of ancestral practices, there is this sort of loggerhead. And the indigenous and ancestral practices always work. So the city is sort of left in this strange space. But I think it also offers opportunities for us to sort of investigate it in ways that can create radical ideas that I think the challenges that cities like Lagos go through are the challenges that most cities of the future are going to have to deal with. And for us, we kind of frame that work, or I guess we call it our project models, just under 2 banners. One is urban, and within that, this idea of how we create spaces for negotiation. The city is really a place that constantly forces you to negotiate. You have challenges as designers where you want to insert an idea, and the system or the environment is constantly asking you, why is this important? And I think in other spaces, you might not get that because it's beautiful or it has lots of capital behind it. I think our challenge is always this inherent resilience in the people that constantly ask the value of anything that we want to do. And that has huge problems and also means things take an extremely long time. And the other thing, which we will talk about just a bit, is the material world, because materials are so fundamental to being able to do anything. In Nigeria, for instance, maybe about 70% of the construction industry is imported. And this has, as I mentioned before, massive implications on how you think about design. But for us, intent is always acknowledging the things and the factors that we have to think about in every project in our practice that is feels because of the locality of our context, which is, the big elephant always in the room is that we recognize poverty. We don't shy away from it. I think it's something that is super important. Also, the idea of the scarcity of land and what it means to focus on heritage and indigenous interactions and practices and the conflict between that and modern ideas of what you would like architectural practice and urban development to be. But also this idea of thinking about materials or thinking about scarcity as a way to approach design. And as I mentioned, again, just being engaged in modes of governance. I think practicing in our specific space, participating in the government and decisions of governance is sort of critical to getting anything done. But I really like a quote by Raul Metro when he talks about Lagos as a sort of indigenous urbanism that has its own particular logic. It's not necessarily the city of the poor, as most images might suggest. Rather, it's a temporal articulation and occupation of spaces that not only create a richer sensibility of spatial occupation, but also suggest how spatial limits are expanded to include formerly unimagined uses in dense urban conditions. And the density of those conditions are something that we are constantly battling with. And in battling with them, we find that a lot of our work is, and I think there's a lot of work that has been spoken today, is really about work in the public. How do you allow for engagement in public realm in the commons that allow for new conversations about what the possibility of architecture and design can be? And the public realm is very contentious in a city like Lagos, partly because so much of it is still the legacy of the British, where there was quite a lot of separation in public space to where local Nigerians and British people could go. And then that was sort of exacerbated by the political coups that happened in the 60s. So there are spaces where the public realm is totally open, but then there are formal, larger public spaces that they become very hard to access. And one of the projects that we worked on, which was Tiwan Tiwan, which started off as an architectural project to renovate a historic Brazilian quarters and to work on a series of buildings in there. And the only way we could eventually get to that end project was to get buy-in from the community. And we did that through, I think we spent about 4 years on small public interventions. They were just like helping them do tourism, for instance. So we helped them think about, you can make money if we create a tourism way where you can take people around the old buildings. Or we now started helping the street sellers and the kiosks to sort of help them formally sell things. And then this sort of, over the years, grew into us creating a street festival for this part of Lagos in order for them to sort of get access to resources and make money. And I think from then, the acceptance of some of the things that we wanted to do became easier, and we were able to initiate some of the initial projects. And right now, we're working on creating about 20,000 square meter creative district in this area that is purely going to be regenerating the area to allow creatives to access and have like cheap rent and cheap studios. And the second thing that we really are constantly battling with is the sort of this idea of access to materials. And we sort of respond to that because we're always thinking about scarcity as a design premise. I think there's this idea of like, we need abundance, or scarcity is sort of tied to poverty or tied to being held back. I think for us, we sort of see it as an opportunity for a more engaged and intentional design premise. And we think about materiality as sort of a heritage. Some of these things are narratives that we use to engage with our clients in order for them to sort of allow us to move forward. We're really focused on this idea of care and this idea of soft architecture. And I think, I mean, again, one of the reasons we sort of take the approach of, I guess, the very long approach in getting things done is just this idea of being very careful and caring about people and building these sort of human connections. And then I think one of the things which we're still trying to figure out in our evolution is how we introduce waste as a resource. Right now, we're doing it very, very rudimentarily, where anything left over from one project, we take into the next project. But right now, we're working, or rather trying to work with the government at state level to create a policy that will ensure that architects, contractors, I guess, are thinking about being penalized for waste, because there's just a massive need. There's a massive need for housing. There's a massive need for everything. Everything is urgent. So we're kind of constantly trying to think about how our work can help in some of that capacity. And this, again, I think I'd mentioned earlier about how we are thinking about where things move. This was us looking at how like coconuts are sort of transported across Lagos and where the waste from the coconut ends up, and seeing how that, where in that process we can intersect ourselves and the opportunities available there. And ultimately, as I'll finish with these few slides, for us in our locality, it's always, we're just asking ourselves in the office, what is possible and what can we do in a very active way? In this instance, it was a 6-meter canal that had become dilapidated, and we have a massive flooding crisis in the city. And we were like, okay, we need to get this water in this canal moving from one side of the city to the other, but there was no funding for it. So it was a case of, okay, we need to figure out how to get funding for it, and also figure out from a functional point of view how that works, but also how we can introduce civic space into that. And all of these things for us are part of this idea of overlapping rings, where we don't see ourselves just solving one problem. We kind of engage in all the iterations of the problems that are sort of happening. And these are the timber people in an area called Makoko that we've been working with, and helping them think about how they move their timber, and how they, I guess, how they think through the process of the resources that they're using in more efficient ways, and giving them information that we're able to sort of generate in our office, and giving it to them for free to say, like, look, you guys can do this. And in our Venice project that I mentioned earlier, we worked with carvers, filmmakers, and we were working on these ancestral or historical traditions of carvings that we use to sort of communicate language, communicate architecture. And we were thinking about how, I guess, these stories can sort of empower and some of the things that we're trying to do. In a recent project that we were working on in the office, we used to have all these birds that come, and we were thinking about this intersection between human and non-human life. And we developed a material which we did in Sharjah Triennial in November, where we took waste vegetation and waste paper, waste card, sawdust, and we sort of created this process of combining them to create this sort of biodegradable series of birds' nests, which we now hung, or rather, it started off, we hung in our office. In the Sharjah Triennial project, we created a sort of like a temporary tower of about 2,600 birds' nests in the industrial district in Sharjah, where most of the migrant workers live. But in that space, it's so crazy because there was, when we entered that space, we found all these like migrant workers that left their families behind, but they were somehow tendering to gardens and tendering to birds. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences of myself and Eve's life, because sometimes the thing is there already. You don't need to do anything, So for us, it was just about accentuating this desire for care and tender, and do it in a way that felt connected. And I think that's pretty much it. This is some of our very, very varied work, and this is the evolution that we're sort of moving towards, which is increasing. And it was really great to hear 10, actually, because I think one of the things we're trying to do is figure out how we can open source models more to give within our own community and, condition as much access to free information as possible. But also, there's requirement in our office for what we call social good, and everybody is required to contribute part of their salaries and also their working time towards projects within the local community. Thank you very much.
I don't know it's afternoon or not, but thank you for having me here today. Okay, we are Showmaker Studio. We are architect, maker, and builder teams working together, design and build by ourselves. The things that we're doing is mostly based in Chiang Mai, Thailand. So it is our part of our atmosphere that happen every single 3 months. We're gonna have the super top field trip into the place that maybe that can give us some sort of the material for us to the design, not only the physical or tangible things, but about the mentality things as well. So this is I'm gonna tell you about our living atmosphere a little bit, because we're not working based in Bangkok. I think many of people in this room used to be in Bangkok, so you guys will familiar what Bangkok happens. But we come from Chiang Mai. This is the northern province of Thailand. So we have quite a characteristic of our Lana culture. So for example, this is the architectural language that we're gonna found in northern part of Thailand. And this is like one of the nice tectonic of the Lana traditional museum. And also we have some like a native speaker. We have our own language. Not speak Thai, we speak in our own language, in northern language. We call Lana language as well. So I want to show some living environment that we live there and now still have this fruitful and livable things that happen in Chiang Mai nowadays. So for example, we still have some kinds of things happen in every single like a week in our province, that still have some local life of the people working and living and really connect with the nature and the community. And we really want to harness what we live and what we gonna be architect as what we belong. So that things that we want to dig in really deep is not about just be architect, but because both of us, me and my partner Thongchai, we are maker as well. We do many things by ourselves. So the thing in first 3 years of our establish of our studio is not doing work much, but observe the things that happen around us. So this is the things that we can show not just our life as architect and as a people, but it's always show the geography and the natural context in Chiang Mai. So we are in the northern part of Thailand, so the geographic character is surrounded by the mixed forest and a lot of mountain, so that's why it gives us the opportunity not to stay only in the office. Let's have a lot of things outside to do as architect. So this is going to be our cultural studio cultural. Let's say we do it as I show you, that not only us, a lot of architect studio, small team that join us a lot. So this is a recent trip that we make in this, I think this December, last December, we trek in the forest, and when you hike in the deep forest, it's not about just the self-relevance on what you can do and making things by yourself, but it also can teach you to understand the complexity of the nature, and it's going to be related directly with the things that you're going to use as architect, and not looking the things as the material, but it's see how complexity of the things that's happen around yourself. So this is the thing that's happened every single times, and I'm quite sure that we are more and more the people, young people join the living, how it's calling, this sort of thing years and years. So other things we still architect, even we show this sort of thing, but we still working as architect. But this is just only 20 minutes from our studio, so you're gonna find we are really, it's really richfulness of the nature surround us, so it's really give us a lot of things, the eyes for looking at the things for us as an architect a lot. So when we hike in the place deep in the forest and the village, it's really lucky for us that around the Southeast Asian region still left some quite deep and raw vernacular architecture for us to learn. It's like we learn something from the super original things. We not learn from the text anymore. We learn from the real thing. So we can say the things that we developed in the first like a 5 year of our studio is something like a self-thought and something come from our observation when we're hiking in the village. So this is the village that in the border between Chiang Mai, Tak, and Mae Hong Son province. So they're really near the border of Burmese, the Burma, and there are a lot of Koreans living in that border, and the current architecture is really famous about the clever of how they used to, and the clever of they understand the material. So this sort of building teaches to read some things that's going to be what is a really pure and honest and straightforward method to do one architecture in the place that really limit with the way that they gonna build some house, because it's, if you have a good drive car road, it's about 6 hour drive into this village. Compared back in 10 years ago, this building is not changed much. So it means that time don't have the things transport into this site much. So that's why they still live some sorts of languages for us to learn. Still now they still live it. So we're gonna find the way that they do some architecture is really raw. For example, they use only, the Koreans really famous, they use only really simple tool like one knife to do all the component of the building just come from teak. There is a lot of things around them, but you're gonna see there's not much anything transport come from other place. So that's why we stay there and we observe the things, the tectonic, and the way that they're living in this sort of architecture. And lucky for us that still have some this sort of village remain for us to see in every day. But in the same time, when you are architect in not capital city, for example in Chiang Mai, we still face different problem and this different constraint. For example, in Chiang Mai, we still because we are not a capital city, so many things in our city is still stuck with the this central government. We say is a problem from the undecentralized, that we really don't have the right to know and to make decision what tax we're going to use with our city. So even we are the biggest province of Thailand, biggest northern province of Thailand, but we still don't have the mass transportation. And the things that show up in late 5 years is like a really terrible of that air pollution that still happen now in Chiang Mai, that I just really lucky to be here for a week to avoid this situation, but still like this for every year. And this sort of thing I really believe is not just because the natural seasoning burn anymore, or is come from the man-made pollution. So the man-made pollution is not about nothing, just only the political complication of our country that we still stuck on this thing. And to be architect in this city is really super challenge, because first of all, you're gonna got the nice program from the central government to can do the nice, for example, the public space is really less program like that, not much diversity of the program happen in our city. All the program or the building type happen in our province. Mostly it's come from the private sector or the investor. So we relied a lot of architecture program with that sort of client, but we still really want to see how diversity or how things that we can do as architect and maker in Chiang Mai. And other big problem in Chiang Mai is we face the brain drain system. So a lot of good people, young, especially the young and the super emerging people that really want to do something in this province, they have to move out, because Chiang Mai is like a middle income, not the lowest income, but middle income in Thailand, and it's not enough for the young generation can stay as a designer or architect in the city. So we face the brain drain system a lot. So this is a big two things as we have to face as the architect, and really challenge for us. Back in 2018, we established our studio, and me and my partner Thongchai, we really hands-on people. So we not only design things. Many parts of the studio, if you see, is really not neat and clean detail, because we build it by ourselves. So even our studio, we have to make it by ourselves. We not rely the things with the contractor. So this the way that we grow up and the way that we working in this province. So back that time, we think maybe the studio not need to be something more the place for architect work. So half of the studio is separate. We separate to our friends at the furniture maker will be other room, and architect team in other room, and in the middle is the place for we do many things in the middle. For example, we do a lot of the tectonic and material mock-up in this hall by ourselves, and you're gonna find the ambience of the studio is like you work in the construction site all the time, because every single day that you're doing in the studio, that other team, they do something else all the time. So this is gonna be something that's happened in our studio. It's like it's more than, I think more than 5 or 6 buildings that we participate as not only architect, but we participate as the builder as well. And for example, some of the material that we have to to put it on the real project. This have to be use the one-to-one mock-up in our studio first, and let's see what is going to work or not. And even we have to taste many things, because the variation of the material that we use is really in tropical country. So we have a lot of limitation of duration that we have to taste. So this place is going to be first lab for methods of build and material capacity as well. Other things that we do here is a workshop. We always set up the small workshop, really funny workshop. For example, we set up the knife knife sharpening workshop, but we don't expect the people come with the really hardcore things like the axe or the knife for doing, because we're hiking, so the knife is one part of the thing that we always have in O's. But we also welcome to the people that want to sharpening their knife while they're cooking. So we want to turn some like a construction technical blend into the normal life people as well. So a lot of our staff not bring something like a weapon, but she's just bring the mother knife for shaping for her mother. So it's something really common and intimate with our daily life. It's not just because you are nerdy about tools and you have to just do that because you are nerdy, but we really want to be something that common with like a normal life. And other things that's happened in the studio is the same thing as we're doing in this room. We set up the book seminar, the film screen, and a lot of the critic things with a small group of architects in Chiang Mai. And sometimes we invite some friends from Bangkok as well to join this sort of things. So I know in the end of this event, it's gonna be everybody drunk and can remember what's happened last night. But it's always begin with some small topic about how the personal interest, what is source of the small tectonic or the construction tectonic that we want to develop, what the thing that we confront in the similar topic nowadays, something like that. And this happened in the event like we just this was is just a late event that we do in last month. And because we have the workshop, so the thing that's happened, I really want to say the thing that we do in our studio is super honestly in what we see when we are trying to hiking outside, and what we want to do is something really honestly. For example, we always tell we are the architect that interest in the local methodology. So it's something super simple. When we're talking about the architecture, I always think about what we have. What we have is about the material resource as the that people that all of the people here have to spec something in your drawing, something like that. And what is our local skill have the builder skill, and also what our skill that we have to deliver it, the things as architecture. So back to the same case study that we always pick up, because it's see really clear, because a lot of vernacular in Southeast Asia gonna be show you something really simple. It's talking about what you have and what is your skill that can form the architecture. So we always thinking about architecture in really honest way, and how we're gonna do it and build it in our own ability as much as we can. Why we have to do that? Because as I tell, the architect in Chiang Mai is the thing, or other people in Chiang Mai, we have just get the really average income. So the way that you understand architecture until the cost of the structure of the cost is mean you can make the people can reach and affordable the architecture that design, but in the cost that's still reasonable in this province and in this region. So when back to our studio, when I talking about what we have, is always talking about the local material that we collect and we try to research in past 5 years of us as architects. I also made tropical space from Vietnam, and we talking together a lot at the studio that Juan mentioned in the first, and we share the same direction that we found the tropical architecture in our Southeast Asian regions, always combine, always form with the earthen things and with the timber things. It's the really main languages as we found in the Southeast Asia. So we try to investigate why the languages of the architecture in Southeast Asia always form in that direction. So we found because our geography and our building technology from the past is drive the direction on that. So two group of the material research that I picked this pick in this lecture is earthen group and the timber group as well. So, but we have other section, but we because this thing is the most languages that we found in Southeast Asia, that we spend like more than 3 years to collect many things and many data for the earthen things and timber thing in Thailand. So for example, when we're hiking in many different regions, we always collect the different sorts of the physical, like the earthen and the soil that have the really different character and the ability and the strength as well. So the northern part of Thailand, especially in Chiang Mai, we have, you're gonna really surprise, only in Chiang Mai we have around 40 ceramics person working in individual and in the entrepreneur. So it means they have the know-how to transform from the earth to rock. So they carry a really long history of knowledge to do the thing. So the things that we do is we not only collect the earth from many regions of the northern part of Thailand, but we still ask them to transform it into two level of ceramic, of the earthen, of the biscuit and the ceramic to see what is the strength, what is the structure of the soil. For example, the most dark one is come from the river regions. We call Mung Kung soil. You're gonna found in the middle of the Chiang Mai. And the whitest one is the porcelain from Lampang. Lampang is the southern province of Chiang Mai. We're gonna find the difference of the character of the soil, and you will see a lot of things happen that we found this sort of material a lot along the way when you drive in Thailand. So not just collect the things in the studio and try to understand the characteristic of each material. We also invite our friends, the ceramics people, to teach us to do the basic thing, the fundamental things called brick. We burn brick in our studio to understand how the people transform the earth to the architecture with super principle, basic thing like brick. So we do the pitch wiring in our studio to understand, to make the real understand why this still material that's still used nowadays in Thailand. And other things is after we can got some many layer and many different ability and potential of this source of material, you can turn it into many things and many raw material as the architecture. And for example, this project we do until we can distribute it into the local factory from the really big company, distribute from the raw material to be the local factory through this sort of architecture facade. So only the earthen sector you're gonna see how spanning of the ability that we do in one sector of the material that we research in our region. So between the 3 years, not only the things that customize or look nice and match with the program of the architecture, we is also mapping the many locations of the local craft that they do. For example, this is a map of only big kin in Chiang Mai. So what does this mean? Because if you have the construction site in the northern part, so you can know where exactly your brick come from. It seems something super detailed and it's not affect much, but believe me, every single truck of the brick that distribute a lot of many family in Chiang Mai. So if you know where is the most near, you can carry and you can grab some material. And as well, here is some ceramic entrepreneur that we found only in Chiang Mai, not just only in Chiang Mai, and we believe it have a lot in Thailand too. So the things that we mapping is something like open data. So a lot of students and a lot of the academic person use it to do the research as well. So for us, it's for our know-how and our way exactly we're gonna get the material, raw material to build. But for other people, it can be the open resource and it's really active. So if some student that found the new ceramic, they're gonna pin up in this map as well. We want to do something really not complicated, something easy to understand and something easy to reach the information. So we were just really easy Google map on our studio and open data, just that. And Yeah, and other sector is wood. You're gonna found and your feeling gonna think the wood is something really luxury and something really not intimate with some culture of build. But in the Southeast Asian, you're gonna find we have a lot of mixed forests because in Chiang Mai we have the high level from the sea that our geography and our natural context that easy to grow the woods that can turn into the main structure of architecture. But something sad that in Thailand we don't have the legal wood industry, forest industry for more than 20 years. So the people have license is something really limited, and not every single person have the license. So the way that architect gonna use wood in architecture is something still really complicated and really criticized in Thailand as well. Even you're gonna find a lot of building doing by wood. So this source is the local timber that we found in northern part of Thailand. We collect, we understand that physically, and we try to make the people understand what sorts of thing that you have in the region, but you not cut it. The things that we do with the archive, and because I have to use this for teach as well. We do the archive and we try to make the student understand that is the resource that you have it, But in the reality, you can cut it new to use anymore. So what's happened that nowadays as an architect, there's a lot of builders still have the wood skill really well in northern part of Thailand, as I showed you the first slide. But in the same time, you can't cut it anymore. So the things that we do is it's not just hiking around in the vernacular, and this is the language of the wood used in for example, it's just the wall panel that we found a lot in the similar, not only in northern part of Thailand, but we also found in the southern part. We're gonna find it in the northern part of Laos, Vietnam, and some parts of the southern of China as well. So we found this sort of language a lot. Many of language is something that's something really clever, and we can call it's like a local wisdom from our ancient. So for example, the sixth war is, I always pick up this example because it's really clever. When the people have to stock the rice, they're gonna use the one plank, and one plank is gonna turn to be the container. For example, when the people pour up the rice in that rice storage, so come up in the third level, it means you have third container. So that is the way that you turn architecture into the function defining, and in the same time the tectonic and the material scale fit with the function as well. So it's not easy to find nowadays. As I tell you, the Thailand, we don't have the forest industry legal, so all the things that we use, and a lot of our friends that they are specialists in wood use, all of the things come from the reclaim. You're gonna surprise that only in Chiang Mai. This is the map of the reclaimed wood shop. So you're gonna find that this sort of reclaimed wood shop is spread around in the area, and if you drive, you're gonna find it is sale in the beside the way. What is come from? It's come from the house that late the people not want it anymore, and they demolish it, and they have the middle people do the business. They're gonna go and they're gonna buy the collapse house, and they're gonna archive it into many parts of the architecture. Your work is binding it new again. So you're gonna find our work a lot that we use with wood, that all the wood that we use is the reclaimed woods. And the reason that you have to know the physical and the strength of the wood, because all the wood that used is reclaimed. So you have to know what exactly the wood is come from, and what exactly the physical things that wood is can be. So this has happened, that what we do. So I talking about what we have in two sectors, the earthen things and the wood things. This is the things that I want to explore more, and I think a lot of things we can find more and more in upcoming future. But other things is really important is what skill we have in the terms of builder, and in the term of as us as the makers as well. So our studio really focus on, we call it flow craft tectonic. We not do the super complicated high craftsmanship things. The things that we want to do is we want to cut off unnecessary language and unnecessary methods of build. So the things that we really interested in is the flow craft things. So maybe you can find it in a lot of detail in the vernacular architecture in Thailand. And the sense of flow craft tectonic is not just the things that you found in the detail, but it's talking about the ability to adaptative yourself while you are building something. So we found a lot of people and a lot of our friends as a builder or the wood maker, they are really have the human sense and really adaptative. For example, the tool that they have to use while they have to eat the mango, it just come from the construction site. Or the things that the scaffolding that you have to invent a new scaffolding when you have to working on the slope of the wood plank. So you invent a new scaffolding, the slope scaffolding by himself, and after that he take off and turn it into one of the building frame as well. So this we call the flow craft tectonic, the things that's really high adaptative and see like a really relevant with the situations of build in that moment. And other things you're gonna find, as always, use this detail to show the flow craft. What is the flow craft tectonic? Because we don't want, we will not see everything joy neat and clean when the people working in the reality in Southeast Asia. So the thing that we looking for when we reading some building is nothing beautiful at the eyes of architect, but we also see the gap of human can do as the maker and builder. So our work is not expect that source of language as well. So we adapt it a lot with this sort of method into our work. So if we have the project not built by us for some builder, so we not expect them to do every single thing, follow our construction drawing like 100%. We still have some gap for them for the human error, for the situation that unexpected, and how understanding them as the maker, not the architect that forced them to do something really beautiful. So we see in a different eyes because we in the same eyes as them. So yeah, this is other flow craft technique that show the example. For example, it's a traditional one. We call the sliding panel for ventilation in the really like the super high craft of the like the vernacular architecture of Lana, but we can change this into our design and our client as we can do is in our studio as well. So this thing that we try to borrow the language but change it and try to do is simplify, not do something complicated, do the thing that's easy to understand, and do the things that the builder also can understand it, not expect them to do something really complicated in our studio. So finally, we're gonna found even one house that we built for our client. You're gonna see a lot of mixture of the material that comes together. Even you use a lot of wood. For example, this one house, I bring up only one project to show. Is this is a house that they are in the location in this one around here. So the location of house is around here. So it means we can carry a lot of reclaimed wood to do this house in the only really 5 minutes of the reclaimed wood shop that we transport into this site. And other important thing is between the line as architect that we commitment to do in every single project as we can do is we try to use only 20 kilometer radius of the material from the construction site. So it's super challenge because sometimes the concrete plan is something else, the brick kind something else, and something else. But we try to challenge to grab all the material from the 20 kilometers around our site. So the thing that's happened like this. You're gonna find the mixture of the things that like we do it by ourselves as a wood thing, but it still mixes it with the industrial material. But the thing that's happened is really nice because every single time the owner of the house understand where exactly material come from, they will not feel how it's too complicated for them to maintenance. You can buy something for fix your house because it's just 20 kilometers. So for example, this is like a 5-minute drive of your local construction shop, all the material come from. So you still can maintain your architecture by yourself and not rely it into the contractor. You're gonna feel familiar with your house more than the things that you borrow other people's hands to do that. So this is our intention to try to use only like 20 kilometer radius of material. So for sure, the brick and the wood is also come from that sort of of the mapping. And we really want to deliver it some kinds of building that's really honest with the context. So we not do something have to be nice form and have to be super expression things. So sometimes we want to do the sometimes, and I don't say so. If back 5 years I say sometime, but nowadays we want to do the architecture that if you drive past, you drive past really fast. Even not notice that architect do that. We really want to do something that really blend with the context and with the neighborhood, and understand the feelings of use have to be like have to be delivered by what we're thinking, the intention and the warmth from the heart to heart, something like that. And if we back into the as architect challenge, for example, this house, I saw we pick up this house because this house is around 260 square meter of house. It's really in suburban area, but we use only like $100,000 US. This number is the number that really how is calling really affordable for the people in Thailand, that they are normal people, not rich people. In Thailand, when people rich, they always come with the program like a 10 million house, and it's really the number is so really too fantastic. But for us, we want to do something really normal things and normal people can affordable. So for example, this house that belonging to the really young couple that they not be debt to be own his house. So more and more things that we really want to do something really homeless home, just that. And yeah, it's gonna be belonging to the normal people as much as we can. And I want to finish our lecture today with this picture. When we established the studio, we really hands-on, as I tell you. So this is one of the kayak that we do in our studio, and this is the testing photo that we testing our kayak. At that time, it's a really, let's say, it's quite a weird studio that try to do everything by themselves, even the kayak. And yeah, but for nowadays, more and more young student architect and our community is grow up a lot. So even any one of this room go to Chiang Mai and want to join our trip, please welcome. Thank you.
My name is Richard Kilo.
And my name is Matej Honč, and we are the founders of Kilo Honč Studio, which was established in the end of the year 2016.
And thank you very much again for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here with you today. And thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our studio and our work. So we are Kilo Honč. And we are from Central Europe, from Slovakia, from Bratislava. Bratislava is the capital and the largest city with approximately 500,000 inhabitants today.
And on the lower image, you can see 3 symbols. And the lower triangle, that's the place where we are born and raised. The white circle, that's the place of our city center, which is pretty small in comparison to the town. And the upper pink square, that's the location of our current studio.
Me and Matthew know each other since childhood, and we are also a very close friend. We know each other for more than 20 years. We met during skateboarding in Petržalka, and we also lived in the same apartment house. Our parents still live there. Petržalka is a part of Bratislava, and it's probably the biggest housing estate in Central Europe. It's a place full of big prefabricated concrete apartment buildings that started to be built around 1975 during socialism. Even if it's like a concrete jungle, it has its own charm. At the moment, the entire Petržalka is colorful because the buildings have started to be insulated and the people are starting to have their facade painted in different colors.
So even when the Bratislava is almost 1,000 years old, this is the biggest neighborhood in the city, and almost 100,000 people lives there in apartments such as this. So we studied at two different universities. Richard finished the Academy of Fine Arts and Design in Bratislava, which is a pretty small school, which is focused mainly on theoretical aspects of architecture. And I studied at Slovak University of Technology, Faculty of Architecture and Design, which is focused primarily on projecting and architectural practice and construction practice. So it is also a much bigger school, and it was amazing for us to have this educational diversity and also maybe a competition in between these two schools because they're different approach to architecture. And this was probably the starting point of our common debates or discussions. So the beginnings of our studio actually started to form in the basement cellar of our apartment house, which was approximately 2 square meters large or 20 square feet with just a chair and little desk. And this space served us as a first platform for our common discussions, project showings, and in general exchanging opinions of architecture, and for a few beers also. We also started working together in last years of our studies. And at first we used the open studios in both schools as our first space to create. And then we found our place in architecture-oriented co-working space, which you can see on the lower images, in an old industrial buildings from the 1900s. And it was also the year 2014, 2015, and there was very little work to do. It was after financial crisis, and we were so curious and full of energy and young, and we wanted to project our fascinations in architecture. So we found a curious way. We decided to start with our own homes, in which we could try to bring our debates to reality. In the architecture of our own homes. So Mortich was basically on the beginning of our studio. And we are currently a team of 4 people sitting in a smaller space, which is approximately 40 square meters or 430 square feet. It is relatively close, approximately 1.5 miles to the city center. And we are sitting on a street level because we like to or love to enjoy the rush atmosphere of the street. So basically, it's like everyday practice. We usually play a lot of jazz music, and we have a common breakfast every Monday.
We are currently working on small and medium scales and mostly residential architecture. We call our theoretical discourse archetypal environments and authentic architecture. More than green technologies, we focus on renewable and regeneration and deeper understanding of the living environment. And we also focus on the social aspect in architecture. We would like to present our view on architecture by showing you a set of these images because they present different layers of our inspirations. These inspirations make sense to us because they talk about scale, about environment, about space, about context, about material, about form, about detail, and about people and their relations with architecture. They talk about architecture as a living environment and that it's a permanent dialogue and discussion. Architecture creates a space for inspiration. We don't see architecture just as a form. We like the idea that is more a form of experience. And at the same time, for us, it's a way to connect and bring people together.
So these images are basically our own photographies that were that appeared by just walking in city landscape or in natural landscape. So we call this architecture authentic architecture or archetypal environment because this architecture is focused on the social aspects and it works mainly with the environment, with the program, with individuality. It's essential, simplified, primitive, empty, defining, continuous, and communicative. The architecture connects and promotes relationships, experiences, is aspiring, alive, natural, and works with contrasts and works with dramaturgy. It's a form of the product of a search for essence. We explore this kind of architecture in context, in material, in scale, in typology, and we create prototypes for it. So on this slide you can see floor plans. So our approach on architecture is based on conversations with the client, mixed with our fascinations, our inspirations in architecture and outside of it, and our discourse that we just told you, and on informations that we receive from the client. And maybe the biggest difference is that the first design we usually make is the very complex design with all the plans, all the description of the main idea, and with all the pictures. And it's basically a final design, but this design is not binding. It's just a starting point for further discussions and improvements on the project. And it is important to us to work this way. Also because the floor plans are not very usual, so for many people it's not very easy to understand them just from the 2D layout or just the floor plan layout. We would also like to describe our work or approach to architecture on 2 projects. We picked them as samples of our production, and the first one is the reconstruction of the reconstructed house in a little town near Bratislava. This is originally a house which was built in 1926, but was completely renovated like 25 years ago, and we could say was destroyed. So in this project with a small budget, we tried to improve the quality of life through the series of interventions reflecting wrong orientations of the house, which was mainly to the street level and not to the garden with a beautiful old walnut tree. The main idea behind this project was also to catch the essence of the architecture and focus the budget to the element of quality of life instead of the form. We tried to create an open home for a young family that enables them to live in the garden and with the garden. Here you can see the position of the actual house itself in comparisons to the tree and to the garden, and you can see that everything interesting is happening in the garden. So the original floor plan was very rigid and structured, so we created series of openings and large glass facade, which is the main intervention. And the facade we moved a little further to the interior, and by that we created some kind of intermezzo in between the exterior and the interior, which added another quality. And what was really important to us, that we mostly remove things from the house, not edit. So this was our main approach. And on another slide, you can see the intermezzo itself. So you can see that through the facade, the interior of the house is communicating very transparently to the exterior. And this side of the house, it's the whole private. So it works very well. Another pictures from the exterior, from the intermezzo. And you can see, although the interior side of the intermezzo, where we designed the shower or the bathroom, which is also very open, and it should also help us to erase the boundaries between exterior and the interior even more. Another pictures from the interior and from the exterior. So this is the garden, this is the view of the garden, and it is the street view. So basically, you just mostly you don't know there is some architectural intervention. So, and the next project is the reconstruction of an old apartment in a little town which is called Trnava. It's also very close to the Bratislava. It's very historic, very beautiful. And the project is located in a city center, in an apartment house, which is from 1903. What we try to do is basically to let the space to stand out. To make this happen, we separated the day part or the main part of the apartment and the bedrooms with transparent walls with the curtains. And these solutions can provide the necessary intimacy when needed, but the space of the apartment can be fully open most of the times. So this helps to create beautiful light conditions as well as the depth of the space itself. The second element of the design are these walls that it looks like they are mounted on a ceiling, and they are on the position of original walls which divided the rooms or the spaces in history. And these walls helps us to create the moment of surprise, some tension in space, where you're not enabled to read the full space from one place, but you need to walk or it opens up as you walk through the space. So again, we really used as little design elements as we could and tried to let the space to create its own magic. So here are a few other pictures. Here is the dining room, the bathroom with the curtain. You can close the shower if you need. And there is the kitchen, which is part of the dining room. Everything is open. And here is another design element. It's very minor. It's a projecting screen, which also serves as a chamber or for wardrobe and everything. So that's basically it. So thank you very much for your invitation, and we really like to be here with you today.
Thank you.
thank you for three amazing presentations, and I'm going to pull up some notes here. But I, for one, wanted to mention that all of the practices that we've seen today have been, in a way, challenging and dangerous to our typical definition of architecture and practice, and where danger is a good thing in my view. And so I think it's been a really exciting afternoon so far, and thank you for that. And also along those lines, Juan, I wanted to thank you for your brilliant framing of this symposium, and asking and kind of challenging the practices and the studios to tell the story of their practice first and their project second. And I think that's led to a really interesting and honest and authentic, in some of the words we've heard today, discussion. So it's really unique and interesting. I do want to save a little bit of time for questions from the audience, so get your question ready if you have one. But I'll get a little bit of a conversation started first. Each of you has given a rich presentation, and I don't want to just summarize it by only the theme of local technologies, but I do want to unpack that theme of the local technologies a little bit. And maybe to start that out, I could ask each of you to talk about what you're doing where you are that you couldn't do anywhere else.
I think for us is the ability to affect policy. I'm not sure where else you can do that. I think by the nature of the challenges in the context, things can move very fast, and you can create like really tangible opportunity. You can see real impact in people's lives by the things that you do. And I don't know where else you can do that. I certainly didn't feel that while I was working in London. And I don't really know anywhere else in the world. I only know London and Nigeria. But I think that's it for me, just this very real sense of immediate change, and how that change can translate into like real policy that can have really good positive impact on people's lives.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I'm not sure that I get the point of your question or not, but for our methodology, we use it like in many different locations as well. As we get the commission and some of the collaborative that we have to do. So we use something like a simple method like this, but it changes in the different contexts that we have to challenge in each site. So the presentation show the micro of the method because we have to relate with our local technology, but in the reality you have to use your method, adapt to every single place that you get the project or commission as well. So I really don't know if this answer your questions or not, but we have a lot of different size of our project. So we use the same method of that, try to figure out what we have there and what can people there can build it. So I think this is something that we do simple things too, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, we feel as a very young practice, so the right answer probably is we are still trying to understand our environment, and our nation is also very young, so we try to understand our history, our past, our roots, and maybe Slovakia is a part of the European Union, but has its own architectural norms, which are really strict among the strict among they are very very strict, like very strict, and we try to find our path in between these norms, just to be able to create individual and to still create individually like good space, you know.
Yeah.
So maybe that.
Okay, good. So a little bit to follow up on that, and maybe this is relating a little bit to what you're saying about process. I want to just explore a little bit what might be the mental model for each of you between translating, or just the relationship between the local and broader, more global issues and practices and contexts. So, you know, Papa, you said at one point the challenges that Lagos goes through are the challenges that most cities will have to go through in the future. So that suggests one model of the local to something bigger, right, to other places, some kind of exchange between the local and other places. And I think you were also describing how your process is very specific, but that same process could be applied in a different context. And what's important is that process and its relationship to, you were talking about, you know, materials, resources, and people. But yeah, so if you could, like, what is the mental model? Like, how should we understand? You know, there's the famous saying, like, what is it? Think global, act local, right? I was trying to remember the right sequence. But, you know, so is that adequate? Does that roughly understand what you all are thinking, or do you have some additional way of thinking about it or understanding? You know, again, for each of you, because you're obviously in different places and contexts, have different models for it.
For me, my partners here really introvert, and we are really self-taught people. So we are graduate in a domestic university, and most of the thing that we use in our practical thing is come from self-taught. Of course, we read a lot. We're looking to and really respect a lot of architects that nice in our region. But mainly of the things as we found, the most important thing is about what you understand, what are you doing. So we really don't have that source of the model things much for me nowadays. Yeah, because every single one, I think they pursue something in different. So for me, we don't have that theory or that mental model things much in our practice. We always rely on really hands-on experience. Yeah, so it's a thing that's quite weird I don't know, but this is the way that we doing in our practice. So, make the conversation with each other by doing and making things more than the super narrative or something like that. That is our method. Yeah, so I really can describe that thing much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think where we work is really interesting. And what you talked about, the idea of local to global, because I think, you know, a lot of the challenges that a lot of cities are going to face, you know, cities like Lagos specifically have been sort of dealing with for a long time. And I think that the major issue is like this resource scarcity thing, you know, this, I think here is, it comes from a point of view of climate action and, you know, this ideas of reuse, as opposed to there, it just comes from a reality of like not enough. And I think that's going to be the global challenge everywhere, where it's like there is just not enough. We can't go and exploit and take things in the way that you do. So, you know, how do you become innovative? How do you become more flexible? And how do you deal with this contention between the citizenry and the state? You know, because I think one of the great things about Lagos, as frustrating it is that you're constantly confronted with negotiation. You can't leave your house and not have to negotiate with somebody. And it can be very threatening and it can be very aggressive, but it also feels that there is an interaction between, you know, people trying to figure things out. And I think that applies to how we approach, how we think about the work that we do. And I think that's something that I think a lot of cities in the future are going to have to work around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Our country is a very small country, so we doesn't need to deal with the density and like the big city problems, I think. So we mostly need to deal with the weather conditions. We have really strong winters and strong summers, so our buildings need to be well insulated and packed with technology sometimes, and then we need to try to avoid it. Maybe this thing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Does anyone in the audience have a question? A few of them. Let's go in the back first, and then up here. Did I see a hand right there? Oh, sorry, right here. Yeah. That's the first hand I saw. A little louder if you can. I guess it's not on. That's probably the problem. Oh, it is on?
Yeah.
I'm getting a symbol from them.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks.
I wanted to thank everyone for sharing about your practices and projects with us today. First, I'd like to say I'm really excited that there's another Omo Ijebu in the house. My question is for Papa. I wanted to know if you could explain to us the challenges of working with the state government, but also, I guess, challenges as a young architect dealing with an older generation of leadership in Nigeria. That's been something that's at the front of my mind for a couple of years as a young Nigerian who wants to go back but is too scared to do so without the credentials that come with like decades of work. Also, I was wondering if you could talk a little more about local technology in Makoko, ways that you've seen them adapt to like rising sea level and issues with land rights. Yeah, and if you see any optimism for waterfront communities, informal settlements on the waterfront.
Hey, good to see you. Really good question. Because I think for us, like I said, you know, I understood very early on that you have to go and meet the people that make the decisions. I think, you know, and I think I explained my educational journey, which is very consistent for a lot of Nigerians. You don't get trained at home. The idea is you go to like England and you have this. And there is this thing in the political realm that, you know, there's a sort of indoctrination into sort of like Western aspirations, right? So a lot of the ideals of what the state government want the city to be is sort of like replications of Dubai or Singapore's. So there is a resistance at state level for the sort of local technologies or indigenous practices that people like Makoko, for instance, the waterside community, have sort of perfected over generations. And I think what we try and do is to do the work for them, because there is, like I said, just a massive rate of urbanization, and there is just not the, not just the political world, there aren't the resources, intellectually, physically, to just do it. So what we try and do is insert ourselves into the process to kind of offer them solutions that are very local. Look, I don't know, architects don't like to talk about this, but money is like really important. Like showing people how you can help them socio-economically, showing governments how this approach to design can not just make them look good, but can actually kind of help their bottom line from a policy point of view. But then you have, you know, with Makoko, for instance, you know, Kunle Adeyemi, I don't know if you know Kunle. Kunle has been working in that community for a long time and doing some really, really great work. And there's other organizations that are working through cooperatives to protect areas like Makoko, and there are a lot of young architects that are trying to map that indigenous knowledge that has been created to create systems that they can now share with the state authorities to say, like, look, these are ways that we can approach mass housing, for instance. These are opportunities that we can protect flooding with the rising water levels. So it's really about being extremely assertive to insert yourself into these spaces, because they will listen to you, you know, as frustrating as it is. But the easy option for them is to just sort of like take a master plan that was done for Dubai or something and then try and sort of like replicate it onto the city. I hope that answers your question.
We had a question down here I saw, and then we'll have to ask Juan if we have time for one more after this one. But.
Okay, thank you. It was actually a question for Papa, but I guess anyone can answer it. And it's that I spent a lot of time in South Africa working on policy and housing, and I found that the policy was very progressive, like excellent, but the design culture didn't catch up with policy. And the idea here is that if you have good policy and bad design culture, you don't come anywhere. But if you have good design culture and bad policy, you can still come somewhere. And I also mentioned you said you weren't so interested in design. I know that's not true, but maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, I think I always say that I'm not interested in design just to be a bit obnoxious. Of course I'm interested in design. I love design. But I think that when you tell people that you're a designer and stuff, they tend to just be like, oh, man, this guy, you know, they kind of switch off. In my context, anyway, they kind of switch off because design is seen as like elitist, self-indulgent, and it's very hard for people to understand the value of design in their tangible day-to-day lives, you know? So I'm always using, oh yeah, I'm a trained architect, but I'm here really to help facilitate the process. But you're absolutely right. You need good design and you need good policy. I think what we don't get in architecture, I mean, I didn't get in architecture education, I'm sure it may be different elsewhere, is this engagement with like policy, like teaching architects the importance of inserting themselves in decision making. I think historically it was a big thing, and that's why you have these, you know, problematic movements of the past, because there was a closer relationship between architects and policymakers. But I think in my context, it's super, super important. And South Africa is one of these places with amazing policies, but the design ecosystem is lacking.
Juan, do we have?
Yes, I have.
You're going to wrap up
for Kilhong, because I want to ask you about your relation with this everyday materials, also in the terms of how local technologies, when you are not in a context that the local technologies are related to craft production or to natural materials. So many architects are living in cities where there is no kind of local technology, but the local technology can be these banal aluminum profiles that you use to divide your house, or some of the totally conventional materials that you are using to give them a kind of intellectual content in your projects. No? And that was in a certain way the intention of inviting you to this panel, no? The way that you confront this idea that perhaps the local technologies in cities are these products that are manufactured in the shops of the periphery. With them, there are many bad buildings built, but also some interesting productions like yours. No? So can you say something about this relation that you have with this banal materiality?
Yeah, maybe a little, but I think it's really simple. We try to collaborate really closely with construction companies, and we usually pick the materials which can provide spatial or function or dividing function or transparency function which we need, and we also focus to have a material that is not very expensive, that is not from far away, that is like very common, as you said. So these are maybe the main reasons why we pick these materials.
And I think we're probably going to wrap up. I had some more questions, but I'm not going to ask them because I think we have to. Do we have to? Oh, we can have one or two more. Okay, so I'll close in a second, but we'll do one more question from the audience. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Since the topic is local technologies, I was really thinking about some of the rural parts of the world that I've been in, and where people are just building with what they have. And they've been some of the most incredible spaces I've been in, which really made me question what our role is as architects and what we are doing. So I guess my question to you is, where's the difference between like the local craftsmen that build these sort of spaces and between like us, educated architects, I guess?
Pardon again, please. What's this? Oh, the difference between. Oh, okay. The difference between the local artisan and the architect as trained. Okay, I think we are too much ordering as architect. We really organize the things, so that mentality is a frame for me. I think when we work closely with the people like local artisans, so we pick up the people do the flow craft, they do the things, follow the experience and instinct more than the order mentality like architect. So I think the result is quite different for me, but I don't say what methods is better, because it's the really 1,000 different methods to do the architecture nowadays. So that the different things as I can tell when I working with the local artisans, and what our eyes as architect is, I think is to ordering, to organize, and to expect something super. It seems we say we accept the perfectionist, but finally we still expect something really neat and clean things and super perfect final result. So I think I think it's quite less human thing. I don't know, but it's come from what I working with the local people. That's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's something maybe it's a conversation for later that I kind of would want to ask all the other practitioners here. Do you ever get this question about how do you scale these kind of localized approaches? Do people ask you, how do you scale? How does this thing scale? I think there's this obsession with sort of scale when you're looking at like localized technologies or more ecological based design. People are always asking about scale. So, and I think that's something that is, when you're engaged in work that is sort of more handmade or artisanal, there's always that thing as an architect or rather as a trained architect where you're questioning whether this thing can scale. So I don't know, I'm just asking a question, sorry. I always want to know what people's thoughts are.
Did you have a, no. I think we probably should wrap up and move on. I just wanted to, instead of asking my final 3 questions, I had a question for each of you, and it's, there are many other topics I think we could go into, but I'll just suggest a couple of ideas that each of you brought up that maybe that I think are relevant to the whole day, and maybe they can carry forward into some of the next session and the final discussion. And Papa, I think one of the things you brought up that I would love to hear discussed a little more in the whole group, and maybe we can have a discussion afterwards, but is about these open source models, and you were even connecting that to some of the ideas before, and I think that's really interesting and worth digging into further. And Pacharada, you talked about learning from the real thing, not from a text, which I think speaks to the current generation of students at GSAPP, and maybe it's also just a moment in time where there's a real need to do that. And so again, we could go deeper. We don't have time like right now, but I think that's a really interesting concept to take forward. And Richard and Matej, you talked about, and I think did a good job of digging into and defining authentic architecture. But I think that's very related to the local discussion as well. And I think that's another, topic for potentially the next panel and the future discussions. So thank you again for 3 amazing presentations and a great discussion. Thank you.